C
That's a
word.
you can use the C word or three letter agency. It's fine. We're fine with all that.
I can say CIA.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so like he was the co-founder of the CIA, but he also created CBS Records and CBS Television, which in the beginning, I think everyone by now knows in the United States, we had three television stations. We had CBS, we had NBC, and ABC. Now, even let's say like if you knew nothing about William Paley and the fact that he co-created CIA, you would probably know that we had the Church Committee hearings of 1975, the Pike Committee hearings also of 1975, which were both prompted by something called I forget the name of the report, but it was just shy of 700 pages that were given to Seymour Hersh, who is a journalist for the New York Times. Now, the New York Times, despite the fact that it is a newspaper created and for the other side, was basically geared toward the middle classes. And so when this report landed in Hersh's possession, and basically is shy of 700 pages of the crimes of the CIA against the populace of the United States. And he wrote about this in December of 1974. It outraged the middle classes so much that what would they created committees to investigate, and what came out was Sig Mickelson, who had been the president of CBS, created again by William Paley, uh, spilled the beans. He said he had become president in 1954, and he, under oath, said, "Look, by the time I was president, I knew the CIA had a long-standing relationship with CBS, so the cat was out of the bag." And I'm sure, like you'd heard of this for sure, right?
Yes, keep going.
Okay, so oh, the report, by the way, if you guys want to look it up, it's called The Family Jewels. It's fascinating reading. I've read it. It's just shy of 700 pages. But even at these the committee thing, only about 10% of the horrible things done to the populace by CIA was really exposed. Now, William Paley is a really interesting guy. He had been in the Office of War Information during the World War situation, but he served in the psychological warfare branch. And now the Office of War Information is the predecessor of the Office of Strategic Services, which itself is the predecessor of CIA during World War II under Dwight Eisenhower. Now, he achieved the rank of colonel. Now, when I discovered this about Paley, I mean, so if I were to say to you, Colonel, and he's in psychological operations, Shaun, what person pops into your mind?
The people in psychological operations from that era were incorporated from the Nazis, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. And also, how about Colonel Michael Aquino?
Oh, yes, the old Satanists. Yes.
So it reminded me of Michael Aquino. And so clearly we have somebody else, Jimmy Iovine, right, who's the co-founder of Interscope Records. And I will be coming back, guys, to Paley, and then we're going to go into Clive Davis. There's so much to cover. Um, Michael Aquino is connected to Jimmy Iovine. And by the way, Iovine was born March 11, 1953. He's best known as the co-founder of Interscope Records. He became the chairman and CEO of Interscope Geffen AMM, which was basically an umbrella music unit formed by Universal Music Group in 1999. Now, if you guys remember the name Rachel Chandler, she is connected to Jimmy. And we have photographs that I and many other people took off her Instagram, which is now long gone, showing her, at age 14 with well known rappers such as Eminem and others. And, like, do you remember the name Rachel Chandler? Or does that ring bells?
Chandler rings a bell, yeah, but I can't remember the backstory.
So she was one of the girls that basically was, who came from money, who was also involved with the epi person. However, she's also connected to Keith Rainier, the Nexium, she, with Brofman, and a member of Rachel's family did work alongside Ivine. And it's just, one of her friends, by the way, posted, and I'm only going to use her first name. It's a foreign name, so bear with me. Berenai, I think, is her first name. Posted a photograph of herself with her grandfather. And who is her grandfather? Michael Aquino.
Mm.
So you see how these people, you can't get one without the other. It's like they're all interconnected. So another of the images that she posts, I'm going to have to spell this, guys. She explains that she is a Canaibal, and there's this
Mm.
horrific, yeah, there's this horrific photo of her mouth with the red substance around it. So I mean, a lot of this stuff is done to debase, clearly, the population, right? And then if you look at the Interscope Records logo, and you guys can pull it up if you want while I'm talking, what does it look like? It's actually the FBI symbol for boy blank. You got that?
Label, I'm looking at right now. Let's have a look.
So if you look at
Yeah.
that, you isn't that the FBI logo for boy? And so basically, I'm going to describe it. It's a small blue spiral shaped triangle surrounded by a larger triangle, where the small triangle represents a small boy and the larger triangle represents an adult man. Now, these people, that's their logo. I mean, they
Wow.
don't worry about, it's that old saying, it's right in our faces, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing about Ivine is that people almost forget or are unaware that he began his, let's say, his career working with John Lennon of the Beatles, as did, by the way, Harvey Weinstein. Did that surprise you, Shaun?
Well, it's hard to surprise me, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had been working on a series, and I had to dive into the Beatles arena, and I was like stunned when I found Harvey Weinstein with the Beatles at the age of
Oh.
16. And
Oh.
then guess what? After Weinstein comes out of this, and he's worked with them for a couple of years, that's when the reports of him, and he starts in the music industry, right? He's promoting stuff, he's in the music industry, he's before he goes into the film industry. He already has the habit of what we later learned in what, a 2017. So this is not like he learned it from the very wholesome, that was sold to us group that we know as the Beatles. I mean, it was stunning for me to hear that. But anyway, we also know that Weinstein and Jay-Z have had a couple of collaborative efforts. Do you want me to describe those?
Yes, please.
So Jay-Z and Weinstein basically collaborated a couple of times. They released a documentary on Khalif Browder, who spent 3 years waiting for trial on Rikers Island. And then before he was finally released, he unalived himself, allegedly. And then the two decided to continue on with another series of projects about Trayvon Martin, the 17-year-old teenager who was stalked and fatally shot by George Zimmerman. in Florida in 2012. And so like they nabbed the rights, Weinstein and Jay-Z, to the two books about Martin. And like they, so they worked together before clearly Weinstein was taken away. Because like they get rid of people every now and then. They try to get rid of Clive Davis. We're going to continue. We're going to return to William Paley. Now,
I just want to say I watched the story of Clive, and it was really heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that happens a lot, doesn't it? Where you just don't hear about it very often.
It does happen a lot, yes.
So, Samuel, who is William Paley's father, is another guy like Wexy. I'm going to call him Wexy because who came from Russia, and they came with nothing, and he turned nothing into a cigar manufacturing business, which basically by the end of the 1920s, lo and behold, he's a millionaire. However, what is omitted from the history of, let's say, William Paley and Samuel, his father, is the fact that cigars were sort of part and parcel of, let's say, the liquor industry. So when we have prohibition, which happened, the cigars, which people would be smoking at these establishments, since these establishments had to close down because of the law preventing liquor, the cigar industry suffered, but not the Paleys. So the Paley, when I study history, I'm like, oh, you know what? That name is missing from other families like the Brofmans, who made their money through the sale of liquor, the Kennedy family, and others, who basically that's where they made their bones during Prohibition. So William basically, what they did was, for the family business, they started to advertise in radios. And this led to the first, like doing commercials and then buying a radio station. And then it turned into 16 stations called the Columbia Phonographic Broadcasting System. And the goal really was only to advertise the cigar business, but it quickly grew into 114 affiliate stations, at which point CBS television was born, because that was the beginning. People were beginning to have TVs in their house. It was no longer just the radio. And this guy is a psyop specialist. So he sees how he can control the masses through the use not only of music, which he then gets Clive Davis to do, but through the television shows that we saw, and reruns, and to present day, it's now going into the gaming industry. So I mean, it surprises me sometimes to think that people are unaware that the television was used as a mind control tool.
One of the viewers is asking, these people, was the origin of their wealth from peddling substances?
Very likely. I mean, it's similar to how the United Kingdom created their wealth, right? Peddling substances, and that's a tried and true technique. So yes, but this happened along, when Paley went into CBS, which then had a record division, which Clive Davis would join, and we'll get to Clive soon. It happened simultaneous with the MK Ultra program, along with other programs. Now you guys can study Congress for Cultural Freedom, and that was a front that the CIA used to use, let's say, art and music and books to again control the mass populace around the world. And eventually they operated out of 35 countries, not just the United States, but 35 countries. Now, you may be surprised to learn that one of their books was the 1955 bestseller, written by Vladimir Nabokov titled Lolita.
Yeah.
You know, come on. So, like, they have an obsession with minors. And the one of the people that was heading the Congress for Cultural, whatever it's called, was Nikolai Nabokov, who was Vladimir's cousin. So, you know, and then of course we have that become a movie, which then is made by our favorite guy, Stanley Kubrick, who raises her age to 14. However, that book, Lolita, is Epi's, you know, I can't say his name. What do we say for Epi?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey's favorite book. He had a copy in many of his rooms throughout many of his houses. So Paley also worked very closely with Rockefeller. And so I'll just mention that one of Jay-Z's earlier record companies was named Rockefeller. This is not a coincidence. Nelson Rockefeller was one of the wealthy men in the United States, and the CIA used wealthy men as vehicles to funnel money into the arts. So the Rockefeller money was funneled into Congress for Cultural Freedom, which was founded in 1950, and it was outed in 1966, you know, by the historian Francis Stoner Saunders, who basically outed them and said they struggled for control of the mind. How, I mean, that can't be any clearer, you know. So MK Ultra, where it's alive and well. So Rockefeller was also the president of his mother's museum. The Mother's Museum is the Modern Museum of Art, MoMA. And if that name is familiar, it is because it should remind you of Leon Black, CEO of Apollo, who was the second largest financial, I'm going to call it funnel, to Jeff after Wexy, and who sat on the board until he received so much heat from all of us, thank goodness, that he stepped down from the board. But what does that tell us? It tells us that MoMA is a cutout as well.
But didn't Jeffrey do all those financial services for him and earn that money legitimately?
Oh, come on.
Can you remind the viewers how much that was?
I think it was in the neighborhood of $158 million given to Jeff out of the kindness of his heart.
And you just hand that much over, don't you, for financial services?
Yeah, you know, because, you know, but Leon Black's father, Eli, who I've written a lot about, was the head of United Fruit. And he found himself flying out of the window of the 44th floor of the Pan Am building in New York in I believe it was 1975. And who was the attorney for United Fruit? It was Alan Dulles. So the whole thing, you see how it's like one, and it doesn't matter. I mean, Leon's fine. They unalived his father. He's still, let's call it, allegedly, in my opinion, from what I see and from what I know, because Leon was a friend of my abuser, I'm going to call him an intelligence asset. Is that okay?
Yeah, let me just read this. I've got it off Google. Leon Black paid Jeffrey $158 million between 2012 and 2017 for tax and estate planning service.
And people bought that.
I was supposed to believe that. Oh my goodness.
But how many people? And that's all you get from mainstream, that they will repeat that ad nauseum. And they will also say, and I particularly dislike when indie people like you and I, well, they can't be like you and I because you and I are truthers, but indie people say, oh, Leslie Wexner he was a blackmail victim. No, he wasn't. Like, I know this firsthand. No, he wasn't.
It says Leon Black, the co-founder of Apollo Global Management, also settled a lawsuit with the U.S. Virgin Islands for $62.5 million to avoid potential lawsuits. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, but that's all he was, right? Just tax advice, sure. But you see, if we trace, it's not easy. It's not difficult, guys, to figure out how to play this chessboard thing that we're looking at. If you study history and you see the role of Rockefeller, and then you see somebody like Leon Black or Leslie Wexner connected to, let's say, Jeff was outed. Wasn't he outed by Alexander Acosta, who said, I was told to back off